The Lonely Explorer by Zigorra.Kiel. The explorer sat in his normal seat in the diner that he always goes to for breakfast, wondering where he's going. He thought long and hard about where he was, where he'd been, and what could still be out there waiting for him. He looked up as a small group of people passed him by. One person noticed his efforts and gave him a smile back. Once again, the explorer felt lonely, surrounded by people, but alone in his thoughts. Did anyone even know his name? He decided it was time to leave the boring, familiar life he knew and head off to discover something more exciting. He paid for his meal and made the long walk home to assemble a supply list and plot out his destination. While he was on his way home, he thought about a land he had once visited, but had never been able to thoroughly explore. It was called the Land of Familia. The climate was unpredictable and could be cold and harsh early in the day, and warm and inviting just moments later. What should an explorer pack to such an ever-changing environment, he wondered aloud. He pulled out his gear bag and first loaded it with his handy machete. He must be prepared for unknown dangers. Thinking about the danger he could face, he was sure to include multiple lengths of rope and a couple of bandanas that were next to his bag he instinctively placed inside. Knowing that he'd need to be at his best, the explorer laid down to rest, planning to leave at sundown. After his long nap, he got in the shower. He knew that a good clean scent would be important when landing at Familia, as there would be other explorers competing for the same land. He lathered up with soap and stood there as the hot, steamy water flowed across his flesh, rinsing stress away. He paid very close attention to the cleanliness of his staff of exploration, as it was key to completing the journey. The staff had not been used for quite some time, and tonight was time to change that. The explorer put on his finest exploration clothing and finished it off with a spray from the secret waters from the Cologne region of France. The night was dark, and the travel was far to reach the tavern quadrant where Familia was most often found. Once in the tavern quadrant, the explorer was able to isolate his landing destination. Touching down where he wanted to would take skill. The path was challenging to navigate, and it took the help of the vodka flow from the tavern quadrant. After some repeated orbiting and signaling, the explorer was able to isolate Familia, flying through the mattress galaxy. To his surprise, all of the protective covers that Familia had adorned in the tavern quadrant were gone. He looked as far as he could see in every direction, knowing that it would take a long time to properly explore every region. He found a space on the upper left shoulder territory and decided to try to make contact. His first attempt at landing was full of danger, and the explorer was glad he was prepared. The northern wind was welcoming him, but the upper limbs kept pushing him away. He pulled out 2 lengths of rope and quickly tied a cuff knot to each upper limb. Once wrangled behind the planet, he used a clove knot to keep them in place, putting him fully in control of the rest of the journey. He made his first successful landing on the left shoulder region, working his way towards the center. He discovered flowing locks that led up to where the northern winds were originating. He pushed the flowing locks aside and felt the neck, knowing that it'd be a long climb. He ran the back of his hand up and down to feel the softness when he detected a scent unfamiliar to him. Was the familiar planet also familiar with the secret scented liquids from France? He needed to investigate closer. He leaned in with his nose to investigate, breathing in the heavenly scent. He felt his staff of exploration tingling, sending him signals that he was ready to fully explore every inch of this new world. But what did this world taste like? He lightly placed his lips on the neck that supported the origins of the northern winds. This caused the winds to produce a relaxing ah-like sound. He knew that it was safe to proceed. As he headed further north, he pulled the flowing locks back farther to discover round attachments extending outward. At the bottom hung soft lobes that the planet had adorned with a golden ring. I used my lips to test the softness level of the hanging lobe. Chills flowed down the planet, and the northern winds let out another pleasing sigh. As I moved to the center of the upper planet, I found the tissue that surrounded the northern winds. They were decorated with a pink paint that was inviting. I pressed my lips up against them to see how they compared to mine. They felt so luscious and full of life. The inviting planet pushed back towards me while opening slightly more. Wondering what was inside, I slid my tongue past my lips to feel Familia's similar internal structure. My breath was increasing in speed, and the wind coming and going from this tunnel was matching my pace. It felt like we were breathing life into each other. Feeling completely in sync with this new planet, I decided to continue my exploration. I looked further up and felt like I was being watched. Knowing that the planet would enjoy the exploration more by only feeling what was going on, I pulled out one of the bandanas and snugly covered the optical region. The northern winds protested with a whimper and some unrecognizable sounds. Not wanting to be distracted by the unnecessary noises, I pulled out the other bandana. I folded it up 4 times and rolled it to where it was just wider than the cave opening where the winds were flowing. I placed it inside to protest the muffled sounds. I placed it inside to muffle the protesting sound. I decided to work my way south, returning to the neck region. I slowly worked my way down with my lips until the northern winds were back to producing a calm and pleasant tone. Below the neck was a small, smooth land with a dark valley on the opposite side. On either side of this valley were 2 very tall mountains. He wondered how he would navigate those mountains once he finally arrived. The explorer was not sure if they were safe. They were soft and unstable. He decided that the best idea would be to hold on firmly with each hand while working his way to the very top. After making sure the mountainsides were fully investigated, he arrived at the peak. There was an island on top of each one, with much darker soil than the surrounding hills. He reached out and placed his fingers on one. It was soft at first. He made his way slowly around the peak, with his fingers gently grazing the center at all times. He listened. The northern winds were alive again, sending pleasing waves of joy. At the same time, he could feel the surface of the peaks get firm and the skin around them tight. He held on with both hands, as even the surrounding ground that had just been quite smooth erupted with a layer of bumps and peaks. The planet was sending signals of joy throughout her land. These peaks that I have discovered must be buttons that alert the many regions of the planet that it's being explored. To ensure that the proper investigation was complete, I placed my mouth on the peaks, using my tongue to circle them. The northern winds continued to emit sounds of approval. I wondered how sturdy these peaks were. First, I squeezed them with my lips. Response was subtle. Then I pressed them between my fingers, just a bit tighter, then slowly released them. I pressed my fingers together again, ensuring the pressure was just a bit more firm than before. This time, the northern winds let out a sound that clearly showed how intense the pressure was and how enjoyable it had become. I noticed a rhythmic motion coming from the southern region as what appeared to be two distant tree trunks were rubbing against each other. I wondered, what could they be hiding? Using my lips to be my guide, I lowered myself down the tall mountains and across the navel plains until I reached the upper edge of the Bikini rainforest. The ground was much more pale, as if it had spent the majority of time in darkness, with a thick forest darkening the path. I grabbed my machete and attempted to clear the path, but knew that taking the long route would be best for this journey. Keeping my lips to the ground, feeling the soft texture of the path, I stayed close to the wayward forest until I settled into a trench. This trench intersected the forest region at the base of the very long trunks of trees that were pressing against each other. Wondering what could be hiding below the base of these trees, I climbed up to where the trees made a major bend, and I worked my way between them. I slid my fingers gently up and down the length of the tree trunk until I detected a relaxation in their root system. As I placed my lips on the inner portion of the tree trunks, they began to open like a flower in the morning sun. What was revealed below was a mystery that needed deep study, and his staff of exploration was at attention, waiting for the call. The explorer looked with wonder at a series of hills that kept an inner mound hidden from discovery. A deep tunnel at the lower portion of those hills was starting to show signs of a flowing river that wanted to release moisture when touched. The explorer lightly brushed the outside of the hill system with his fingers, looking for the best passage to take to arrive at the hidden mound. He realized that with every touch, the moisture of the nearby cave was increasing. The explorer made a few more trips around the outer edges of the hills before discovering the fold that was hiding his target. Worried that he may harm the hidden mound, he used his tongue to slide between the hills and the hood-like folds. To keep the delicate surface from moving, he reached in with his lips to hold it in place. He moved the tip of his tongue gently across the upper crust to test its sensitivity. The northern winds were alive again. I could tell that both pulling in air and letting it out was happening at an increased speed, and I worried that the bandana being held at the surface would be too much for this planet. I had it removed, and the howling winds of pleasure resumed. The explorer continued his oral exploration of the hidden mound by increasing the speed and pressure applied by his tongue. As the intensity of the oral exploration increased, so did the volume of the northern wind. Soon, an earthquake-like shaking began occurring with every squeeze and lick. The explorer put every effort possible into ensuring the hidden mound was fully studied, when one final heaving earthquake erupted, and the northern wind screamed with delight. I listened to the north to hear deep bellows of air being sucked in and out, followed by sighs of relief. Turning towards the dark cave, I noticed the river was boiling over with a warm, inviting flow. The explorer's rod of exploration could not be contained any longer. When he first tried to penetrate the cave's hot opening, it was met with fierce resistance. On the first tip, only the tip was able to push its way through, as this cave had gone unexplored for way too long. He used the staff of exploration to circle the entrance a number of times until he spread the hot waters of the river around every surface. He was able to plunge in a bit deeper on a second attempt, deeper yet each and every time that he pulled mostly out and drove the staff in. Each time he plunged forth, the northern winds let out a moan of delight. Alas, after repeated attempts to fully explore the deepest part of the cave, the rod was fully swallowed by the depths below. The explorer kept moving the staff in and out until every surface had been touched repeatedly. The staff of exploration sent a signal to the explorer that it was nearing the final stages of its journey. He felt a deep, pulsing energy as the staff exploded at the tip, completely filling the cave with its own hot juices. The explorer let out a cry of victory that even overpowered the intensity of the moans of the northern wind. He collapsed on the ground, exhausted after such a vigorous journey. He could feel the newly explored planet try to free herself from the safety ropes. He cautiously untied the upper limbs and then slid the top banana off the upper viewing area. The explorer laid back down, still trying to recover from his journey, as the planet used her upper limbs to surround his body, holding him close to her naked surface. Completely fulfilled, they drifted off in one another, until another rotation of the orbit brought the next day.